Our reading is taken from the Gospel according to Matthew, from the 23rd chapter, from the beginning verse up to verse 12. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it. But do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they teach. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the shoulders of others, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. They love to have the place of honor at the banquets and the best seats in the synagogues, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and to have people call them Rabbi. But you are not to be called Rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers and sisters. And call no one your father on earth, for you have one Father, the one in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant, and who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted." Listen to what the Holy Spirit is telling us today.
May the words we receive inspire us, comfort us, and challenge us. Amen.
Amen. So question for today's sermon. Meron ba kayong ego? Do you have an ego, or are you narcissistic? Are you narcissistic? If you are human, then yes, you have an ego, and yes, you have narcissism. All of us. No one has, pwedeng sabihin wala siyang, unless you're the Buddha. Okay? Unless you have become Gautama Buddha. Then, you have transcended ego and narcissism. But for the rest of us, we have egos, all of us. And all of us, part of that ego is narcissism. And ego in Latin simply, yung salitang ego, ego, it's a Latin word that simply means I. In English, I. Or sa Tagalog, anong sa Tagalog? Ako. Akesh sa Bex. No? In the Filipino gay language, akes. Akis. No? All have egos. A sense of a unified self. Unified self. The sense of self. Which, by the way, sabi ko nga kanina, in Eastern philosophy or Buddhism, it's an illusion. But that's a topic for another time, another faith tradition. And a great aspect of this ego and narcissism, sa aking suspetsya, in my assumption, in my guess, comes from the fundamental biological fact that all life, lahat ng buhay, all life forms seek self-preservation. Doon nagmumula yun. Self-preservation and survival. And then for more complex forms of life, more complex creatures like humans, other than self-preservation and survival, we seek maximum benefit and comfort. Yun yung malaking bulto ng ego and narcissism. And one of my favorite authors, isa sa mga favorite kong authors, about human psychology and psychohistory or psychological history, Robert Greene, sa kanyang book na Human Nature, he tells us that, and I quote, "From the day we are born, we humans feel a never-ending need for attention. We are social animals to the core. Through the quality of attention we receive from others, we feel recognized and appreciated for who we are. Our sense of self-worth depends on this. Because this is so important to the human animal, people will do almost anything to get attention, including, for some people, committing a crime. Diba? Merong ganun eh. May mga, I don't know here, but I've read, movies, etc. So, di ba sa Western, even in Western, Europe, UK, US, there are crimes that was committed for attention, to be infamous. So, yun yung sabi ni Robert Greene, in extreme cases. So, we are all attention seekers, all of us, lahat tayo, and seekers of recognition or acknowledgement. It's part of human nature. It is not bad. It's not necessarily bad. For Robert Greene, all of us are narcissists. You and me, all of us. Every single human being is narcissistic by default. And sabi ko nga kanina, all life forms actually. You want what is good and beneficial for you. But the difference, according to Robert Greene, is whether someone is a healthy narcissist or tinatawag niya the unhealthy narcissist, yung tinatawag niyang deep narcissistic. Malalim yung pagiging narcissistic. According to Robert Greene, the difference is whether our self-love is healthy enough to be transformed and used for empathy. Whether your self-love, love of self, is used and transformed for empathy, solidarity, service, compassion to others, generosity, acts of service. If I extend love to you because I know what love is for myself. Yun yung healthy form of narcissism. Okay? Or, baka negative kasi ng word na narcissist eh. Yung healthy kind of self-love. Or, yung opposite nun is, if this self-love is expressed through selfishness and greed, ako lang, sa akin lang, only me, only mine. Selfishness and greed, manipulation, abuse, and exploitation so that you can benefit. So that only you get the attention, the comfort, and the benefit. Pero sometimes hindi lang dun eh. Sometimes it's also the negative narcissism is also expressed in the victim mentality or victim behavior, the slave or victim mentality, neediness, possessiveness, obsessive behavior to the extent of stalking, criminal levels of stalking, which this church experienced, the former pastor experienced. Or yon, chronic dependency. Ang tawag dyan, codependency. Ano yun? Codependency, right? Chronic codependency. You need to love me and me alone. But unhealthy or chronic narcissism or egotistical behavior does not happen out of nowhere. According to Robert Greene, whether a child will turn out to be unhealthy narcissistic or deeply narcissistic or not is between the ages of 2 and 5 years old, according to him. Parents and other parent figures should, ito yung quote niya, encourage us in our first efforts at independence. If they validate our need to feel strong and recognize our unique qualities, then our self-image takes root and we can slowly build upon it. Kaya actually, ang daming nagsasabi na yung mga unhealthy and deeply narcissistic people are people who are insecure. The proper formation of the self or the ego in toddler years. Yun yung sinasabi niya. But I want to assume, ito ako na to, I want to assume and believe that healthy or unhealthy narcissism is formed up until the age of 14 or 16 years old. Para sa akin, no? Kay Robert Greene kasi toddler eh. Sa akin, for me, tingin ko, it's up until about 14 or 16 years old. Kasi up until that time ka nag-develop ng iyong sense of self eh. At yung iyong ethics, behavior and attitudes in life. And then afterwards, after the age of 14 to 16, it takes firm root, nag-uugat na siya, or becomes hard as cement. Up until those ages, from toddler to teenage years, did we receive a good balance of attention, attentive affection from parents or other parent figures and peers? Did we receive some recognition and acknowledgement from adults, siblings, and friends? While at the same time, did the adults held us properly accountable for any behavior that is selfish, arrogant, and self-centered? Hindi rin kasi ako naniniwala dun sa parenting na always affirming lang. Yung always, everything is good, nothing is bad. Hindi makakapag-build ng sense of accountability rin yung bagets. So it's a balance of affirmation but also holding the child or the teenager accountable for any behavior or attitude that's selfish, arrogant, hurtful, yung ganon. Were there experiences where we were appreciated and validated, while at the same time experiences where we are forced to think about the welfare and feelings of others and not just ourselves? Yun yung crucial doon. That the world is not just about you. Did we have experiences that forced us as a child or as a teenager to think about other people? Or yung childhood ba natin and teenager is always anything that you need, anything you want, you get. No. So yun yung crucial doon. Although I make it clear, the same as Robert Greene does, childhood experiences and even trauma is not an excuse, nor justification to be a vile and violent human being later on. Of course, we understand trauma. Of course, we understand childhood experiences. And that some of those will lead certain people to behave in a certain way. We understand that. And we want to be in solidarity with people to be in the process of healing. But at the same time, hindi pwedeng palagi na lang ichichika, always, I did this because I had childhood trauma. Always, the excuse will always be that. No. Because the question is, what are we doing about it to heal that childhood trauma? And so that we do not pass on hurting others. Asan ba ako? Our gospel reading today Jesus talks about the kind of religious leaders who can be interpreted as unhealthy narcissists. Yung itong passage na to ni Jesus. Religious leaders who are unhealthy narcissists. The pulpit, the altar, are centers of attention and influence, and therefore focal points of great power. It is no wonder that a lot of unhealthy narcissists are drawn to it. But before talking about narcissistic religious leaders, at marami niyan, especially the charismatic ones, before talking about narcissistic religious leaders, I also wanted for all of us to be aware that there's a narcissistic spectrum, according to Robert Greene, from which we are all part of. So even if Jesus is talking about religious leaders and narcissistic, we have to frame it and ground it in the idea na lahat tayo are within the narcissistic spectrum. And even if we are in the healthy spectrum, there are triggers and situations where minsan magmo-move ka to the other side. You know? We are in the spectrum. Which also means that both healthy and unhealthy narcissists are in every field, profession, race, and even in almost every religion. So yung healthy at unhealthy narcissist, nasa lahat ng lugar, profession, lahi, religion. And I'm sure na-encounter nyo na some of them, yung mga unhealthy narcissists sa trabaho, in work, even in family, in school, or in church. At sometimes tayo din yun. Hindi, kaya nga, minsan kahit healthy ka, sometimes you go to that. Nagpa-fluctuate. Sometimes they're subtle. Some of the deep narcissists are subtle and works incognito. Hindi natin, may mga ganon, yung mga medyo brilliant na deep narcissists. Sometimes they are outright and openly terrible, yet gain the following like Trump and Duterte, or Putin, some other world leaders who are, despite being deep narcissists, unhealthy narcissists, gain the following. Sometimes they are charismatic and clothed in the light of religion, that the shadow of their narcissism is drowned by both the light of the pulpit and the artificial light of their own charisma. Even as Jesus talks about the narcissistic attitudes and behaviors of some religious leaders of his time, let us also look within ourselves. Tingnan din natin ang ating mga sarili. If these things also apply to us. The first thing, unang kuda ni Jesus, is about burdening others while you yourself is not willing to be burdened or to help. Yun daw yung una. But again, yung sa sinabi ni Jesus, context ng religion, di ba? The priest, the Pharisee who burdens the people but are unwilling themselves to help. But is this also applicable in other areas of life? If you are a manager, a supervisor, a team leader, or if you're a business owner, do you lay heavy burdens on your subordinates, on your teams, or employees, and then you yourself is unwilling to share in the work and the burden, and then in the end, only get the credit, the promotion, or the commendation, and the profits? Meron akong boss na ganyan before becoming a pastor, working for a big company. I had a very good-looking boss. Like, really good-looking boss. Straight naman siya, straight. At siya yung boss na, ewan ko, feeling ko judgmental na ako sa na. Siya yung boss na parang, sa ano ko lang, observation ko, yung parang papogi lang. All looks, payami, ganda lang. And I guess that's not just his fault. It's also the culture and the system na mas napopromote talaga ang papogi. He looks the part. He dresses the part. And it's very, yung sex appeal niya is really strong. Although hindi naman siya masyadong pa-burden sa mga employees niya, pero ang problema naman sa kanya, when shit happens, he finds others to blame and then take the credit, take as much credit as appraisal even if he does not deserve it. May boss namin dati. Now, secondly, in the passage, Jesus talks about hypocrisy. No? Of teaching and preaching but not exactly doing them ourselves. Do you do this? Do we do this? Yes. Do you say one thing and yet do the contrary without any sense of guilt, remorse, or personal accountability? Now, I recognize that as humans, all of us, as humans, we really have some contradictions. Lahat tayo, we have contradictions. We say one thing and do something else, the complete opposite. But the difference is, do you strive to resolve the contradiction of your words in actions? Do you hold yourself accountable? Yun yung sinasabi kong the difference between imperfection, who strives to improve, to process, to heal, versus someone who deadma. I don't care. I don't care if I say things and do the complete opposite. Kebs talaga ang way of life. Ang daming moralistic na chika pero siya mismo doesn't live to it. Not even 5% of what the person says. And so that's the difference. A third of the lectionary reading today then speaks about wanting to be seen. 1/3 of the passage today, Jesus speaks about yung desire to be seen, makita, to be famous. In any profession or in any other thing that we do, is it all about being famous or being seen? Sure, perhaps there's some level of healthy affirmation. Meron namang healthy affirmation. Okay naman yun. Diba? Mag-post ka sa Facebook ng masarap ang kinain nyo or nagbakasyon ka. That's fine. As natutuwa kapag may nag-like. That's fine. There's a certain level of healthy affirmation and validation. And even here in church, I encourage for us to always actualize and verbalize our appreciation for one another. Lalo na tayong LGBT, many of us did not get the healthy kind of affirmation growing up. Genuine affirmation. So, yun yung sinasabi ni kanina na healthy naman yan. There is a certain level of healthy validation and affirmation. But the question is it just about it? And is it just all about you? That's the question. Is it all just about being famous and seen? In many years before, sinasabi ko naman na yun yung bang nade-depress ka or nalulungkot ka pag biglang tatatlo lang nag-like ng post mo. Yun, medyo baka kailangan natin i-check ang ating sarili pag ganun. Diba? It's okay na matuwa kang may nag-like, pero pag nalungkot ka na konti lang yung nag-like, that's a little bit of a problem. Oh, di ba? Grabe naman. So, gano'n, no? So, yun yung things that we need to ask ourselves. Is your self-worth defined solely by the number of eyes and ears paying attention to you and the number of likes and followers on social media? Yung bang self-worth mo doon lang naka-define or doon lang nakatuon? Connected to that ay yung pang-apat na chika ni Jesus. The fourth thing that Jesus said about titles that makes us feel important and makes us feel powerful. Is your motivation more about the titles and accolades, rather than the work and the mission that those titles symbolize? Do you wish to be called team lead, TL, sir or madam, boss, CEO, or chairperson because it feels good to hear it and to hear it always? Do you wish to become a pastor or priest? Yung sinasabi ni doon kanina, because you want to be called father without realizing or wanting the responsibility and the weight of what it means to be a spiritual parent. Ang tawag dito. I've said this for the legacy members, diba, nabanggit ko na ito before. There were a number of years before that people, gusto ko magpastor. Tapos yung isang retreat noon, may nagsabing, nakabilog kaming ganyan, we were in a circle, and there was this person who, in that retreat sa UTS, who said, sharing, hindi ko naman matandaan yung sharing eh. But the person said, 5 years, 3 years nga yata, 5 years or 3 years from now, I want to sit across the circle. Kung nasaan ako sa kasikakay. I want to be there because I want to become a pastor similar to Kakay and Joseph. Asan ka na, ate?
So, wala dito.
Wala. Siyempre, hindi ko ikukwento yung kung nandito siya, di ba? Because yes, for many years, there have been people who said that they want to be pastor, they want to be a priest, they want to be a religious leader because of the title. And without realizing the burden, what it actually means to stand here. What does it actually mean when someone calls me pastor? That is not just a word you throw around. There is some weight to that. Are we more about the titles, or do we really realize what those titles actually represent? The work that they represent. Kahit sa academy, yung mga PhD, doctor, or professor, do you wish to be called this name simply because of the social standing they give without the social responsibility of what a serious academic really means, or a serious person of any profession really means? Do you wish to become a pastor or priest because all you see is the way the pastor stands and speaks in front without noticing all the difficulties and challenges of the vocation? The hard work that it takes before becoming a pastor. The hard work when you are already the pastor, and what it means to step out and resign as a pastor when the time comes. If you are motivated more because of the title or whatever other privilege you think the title gives, then Jesus tells us, do not be called by those titles. Do not do things because you merely want to be seen or to be recognized. And again, hindi lang to sa religion. Anything, in your work, in your company, saan pa ba to? SK, sa barangay, no? Oo, no? Or tatakbo ng opisyal. Kaya nga, I was mortified when my partner, si Lawrence, graduate ako, di ba? Graduate ako noong 2018 sa seminary. Tuwan-tuwa siya, masayang-masaya siya. May graduation gift daw siya sa akin. Graduation gift. Pagbukas ko. Yung sa mga politiko, yung pangalan sa harap ng mesa. I was so mortified with Oo, ganon. Hindi ko na alam. Buong pangalan pa. Reverend Christopher Joseph San Jose, MDiv. I was so mortified with that, Kasi idea ko, hindi ako natutuwa sa mga ganon kasi kilala ka naman, halimbawa, yung regular, di ba, sa mesa, in the table, you have an office. Kahit nga yung pangalan sa labas ng pinto they already know, number one, it is your office. And if they know it's your office, they know who sits in the table. Why do you need to have a name there? That's why nung pinagawa ng partner ko ni Lawrence, kay horror talaga ako
Siyempre proud siya. Proud lang naman.
Sus Mariosep. What is your motivation for anything that you wish to have or aspire for? What is your motivation for doing what you are doing now? Or even having a partner, pagkakaroon ng jowa. What is truly in your heart? God sees, knows, and hears the truest feelings and inner thoughts that we have. How do we catch ourselves and avoid becoming the kind of narcissistic persons that Robert Greene speaks about? Paano natin ma-avoid ito? Even if indeed you are someone who's deeply narcissistic. Kasi meron siyang mga recommendation. The kind of leaders that Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew tells us from 2,000 years ago. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 things. At palagi nang sinasabi, yung pangalawa pala yun. The first one is always check your heart. Always examine your motivations and reasons. Always question your feelings and emotions. Tanungin mo ang sarili mo, bakit nga ba gusto kong maging boss, maging supervisor? Why do I want to own a business? Why do I want to be a counselor? A professional counselor? Is it already an unhealthy form of narcissism, or is it a kind of self-love that is balanced with the love and consideration of others? Are you motivated by noble and honorable reasons, like common good, social justice, and uplifting others? So i-check natin, pause and always check your own thoughts and inner conversations happening in your mind. If you wish to be a pastor, why? For what reason? If you're imagining yourself in front of the altar or pulpit, is there some other reason other than feeling good about it? May iba pa bang rason? What are you willing to give up or to transform into? What unknown path are you willing to walk on? And what crazy life you're willing to embrace to become a pastor of your people? Second, ito, sinasabi na to before. Banggit ni Sean, self-awareness. Self-awareness. You must be self-aware of your own weaknesses and tendencies. You must be aware, you must check yourself for your own narcissistic feelings and behavior. You must be honest about them to yourself and even to a trusted few. You must be self-aware of your own triggers and moods, your own traumas and mental health conditions. You should be aware of your own limitations. Doon mo rin ma-check yung unhealthy narcissistic Kasi wala siyang pagkilala sa kanyang limitations. For the deep and unhealthy narcissist, kaya niya lahat. He can do everything and anything all the time. At siya lang ang pinakamagaling. That's one of the clear signs of a deep narcissist. Oh, I'm the greatest. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I did that. So self-awareness. Particularly, be aware of your own limitations. Gusto mo maging supervisor or manager, pero you're not someone who knows how to organize or manage even your own personal life. How can you manage others? You want to be an influencer or a vlogger, but you don't even know what it is you wish to influence others with. Nagpatawa lang, influencer na. Naghubad-hubad lang sa TikTok, influencer na. Or ilalagay na sa profile, model daw siya. Diba? Or gusto mo maging preacher or pastor, pero you are not able to deal with the people and the pressure of people's needs and expectations. Nor do you want to exert effort to study and read. Diba? Sa pagpapastor, you have to face a lot of difficult people and difficult situations. Pati sa pagpapastor, hindi pwedeng hindi nagbabasa. So you cannot tell me, Pastor, gusto ko magpastor pero hindi ko bet magbasa. No. Pwede rin naman audiobooks. Hindi ko sinabing literal na libro. You have to have self-awareness of almost everything about you, your life and your limitations, your strengths and your capabilities, your triggers and your motivations. You must always check yourself and check your well-being to lessen and mitigate narcissistic natures and tendencies and keep it in a healthy level. Pangatlo, self-regulation and self-restraint. Punta muna tayo self-restraint. Self-restraint or pagpipigil sa sarili mo. Kahit na gustong-gusto mo ang isang bagay o isang tao. Balik tayo sa pagpapastor. Gina G ka, pero alam mo sa sarili mo na mukhang hindi mo carry or hindi pa, then wag na muna. Kung wag muna, work on yourself. Actually, kahit dito sa pagpapastor kahit to sa promotion sa mga kumpanya. Work on yourself. If you work on yourself, then promotion will follow. Or becoming a pastor will follow. Undergo the process of discernment even before considering any promotion or becoming a pastor. Or bet na bet mo yung isang tao. Bet na bet mong jowain. Bet na bet mong jowain. Pero you know sa sarili mo, hindi ka pa emotionally, mentally, or even financially ready para magka-jowa. Restrain yourself, girl. May mga bagay na either wag mo na ituloy kasi hindi talaga for you, or may mga bagay na wag na muna and allow yourself to be transformed and develop. Self-regulation. Ito yung self-regulation. So yung kanina self-restraint, pagpipigil ng sarili, di ba? Ito naman regulating yourself. The pleasure of sex and the allure of money are the two main temptations and destruction of any leader, religious or secular. Ang dalawang natatanging bagay na kinasisira ng sino mang leader, ito man ay religious or any other profession. Sex and money. Kahit bet na bet mo yung subordinate mo or a new member of the church, don't. Kahit nag-aapoy na sa kasing init ng apoy ng araw yung libog mo, huwag mong ituloy o subukan. Kahit na you have every right to become compensated o kung wala namang pera or kulang yung pera ng simbahan or ng NGO or organization, huwag mong i-insist na kunin ang tamang compensation for you. Sa karanasan natin, sa karanasan ng open table, dalawang bagay sa sex. Pareho kami ni Kakay. Both of us had experiences of people offering themselves. Alay. Offering themselves. At syempre, ang hirap. Indecent proposal. Hindi, wala namang proposal. Innuendos. Indecent innuendos. At yung chika ko before, yung kinasal ko sa Cebu, sa Bantayan Island, na naghiwalay na ngayon. Yung best friend. Nakwento ko na yun sa iba sa inyo eh. Ewan ko kung ano, di ba? The best friend of the groom, because they said, "Oh, pastor, you don't need an assistant. We will provide an assistant for you." So okay, fine. So and when I arrived in Cebu, the assistant is the best friend. Okay, who's relatively okay. And then when we arrive at the island and the accommodation is provided, lo and behold, we were in the same room. That really made me so tense. Pero wala na akong magawa. And then, talagang ramdam na ramdam ko yung na mayroon kaming sexual tension. And then kinabukasan pa, the following day, kasi hapon pa yung kasal, in the afternoon yung wedding. The mother said, "Oh, pastor, go and look around, mamasyal kayo, look around Bantayan Island." Kala ko naman may van or sasakyan, yung pala motor. Tapos yung motor, halos lahat, puro girls. And there were only 3 of us were guys. And siyempre, yung driver, the best friend, and me. So you can just imagine my stress and my dilemma. One of the greatest tests of my life and profession. And I did not. Whether you believe me or not, I did not. Because my thinking was, I'm here as a pastor officiating this union. It's not even so noble. It's more of, if I engage in sex with this best friend, of course he will tell to his best friend, "Oh, you know what happened between us and then it will, and it gives me that cringe that I was unprofessional on that event, even if it will not reach anyone else in Manila. But I was so tested at that time. And the other thing about this church, relating to money, we have certain control of the money of the church. It's a small church, okay? And there are times I started with a salary of 6,000 a month. 6,000 a month. And of course, I could insist, hindi pasweldohin niyo ako ng taas. O kaya, dahil hindi ako kayang pasweldohin, I will get all the Holy Union fees. But me or Kakay never did that. First of all, we can live simple lives. That's one. Second, we see the situation of the community and we will work with what the community is able. And then we will work out to make sure that every year we can improve on that's the healthy way of doing things in terms of money. Uh, but again, there's a lot of scandal around sex and money among many leaders, religious and otherwise. Saan na ba? Self-regulation, NGO. Ayan. Sabi ko kanina, kulang ang pera ng simbahan or NGO organization mo, pwede ka bang mag-insist na kunin yung tamang compensation? Maski sa mga malalaking negosyo, halimbawa sa malalaking negosyo, nagpapasweldo ka ba ng makataong sweldo? Eh hindi naman pala. And then you will give yourself huge amounts of bonus as CEO or owner of the business. You're intentionally not paying a decent wage. And yet, as a business owner or CEO, you will give yourself as a huge millions of dollars or pesos of bonuses. While your people, your own employees are having it very hard. Kahit ikaw ang may hawak at nagdidesisyon sa pera ng simbahan, organization, or pera ng bayan, can you spend it any way you want it by simply because you are the CEO, the priest, the executive director, or because you are the vice president of the Republic of the Philippines? Dahil lang ikaw ang may posisyon, do what you want. Self-regulation. Yes, may feelings ka at may pangangailangan bilang tao. And we are committed to justice, to sex positivity, and fair labor practice. Pero depende sa context at sa kakayanan. As a leader or someone who has been trusted with the people or money or both, you have to temper and regulate your feelings and your actions. You must overlook and overpower your need for gratification and personal gain to uphold ethical principles, honorable motivations, and uphold the very role you have or are aspiring for. Last one. Self-development and placing yourself in the larger work and vision. So, isa sa mga natutunan ko dun sa Community Solutions Program, when I went to the US for 4 months, lahat tayo kasi may thinking na dahil leader ka, especially kung leader ka sa simbahan or in a community, you have to be a martyr. You have to be Saint Francis. That might be good. I mean, of course, that has its own good. But not in every context or situation. So lahat ng itong sinabi kong ito, meron din naman siyang pagbabalance. It has a balance that you can have self-development. You can have a certain benefit. You can be compensated. Within appropriate context and situation, you can engage in sexual whatever. But you must place yourself, your desires, your needs within the larger context and within the commitments and principles you are following, preaching, and believing. Some level of self-interest is okay in the advocacy and ministry work. But the key here is that your self-interest should be more about self-development so that you can be effective in the work that you do or will do. You place your self-development in the larger work of advocacy or ministry. Nakapaloob at ini-inform ng community, advocacy, or justice work ang iyong paglago bilang individual. You are promoted only because you are the right person and you are ready for the role or position. You have both the minimum skills and the right attitude for the role or position. The difference kasi with a narcissistic person is the reverse. Everything else should be based and informed by the person's need to gain power, attention, and influence. For narcissistic persons, the work or organization, ito man ay private or NGO, government, or church, for the narcissistic person, everything should be centered around, ordered towards, and managed for the benefit of that leader. It is the advocacy, the mission, or the community that takes precedence and not the need or well-being of the leader. Gets natin yung difference noon? So, yung narcissistic leader, lahat ng bagay dapat umiikot sa kanya. Versus dun sa the leader, the volunteer, whoever it is, siya yung inilulugar niya, piniplace niya yung sarili niya within that framework. And he is part of the interconnectedness of the movement, the work, the advocacy, the ministry, or the company. It takes precedence. This does not mean to say na kailangan gawing busabos yung leader. Yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. You get what I mean? The basic decency of the work. It is okay if you want to advance and level up in your company or organization, if this would mean a better working environment for your team or company. It is okay to be compensated as a pastor or as an NGO worker according to what is available and what the organization or church can work on moving forward. How can you effectively serve and lead if basic needs are not met? Kasi hindi ka rin makakapag-serve effectively if your basic needs are not met. How can the organization grow if its leaders are not reasonably growing and developing? Diba? For example, turing chapel natin, okay lang naman na magkaroon tayo ng maayos at magandang chapel because our ministry and advocacy determined that we needed this. And we did not have this bigger chapel because of selfish or superficial reasons. So in closing, check your heart and be honest with what you see inside your heart. Practice self-awareness, practice self-regulation and self-restraint. Self-development and benefit should be informed and framed by the purpose of serving the people and the larger work of justice and ministry. We are all narcissistic. We are all egotistical. But we must examine ourselves where we are in the spectrum and how to best conduct and carry our bodies, our genders, and our identities to serve and love one another. Let us not be blinded by positions and centers of power, nor allow ourselves to be distracted by titles and crowns. And should any of you here, kung meron man dito at sa ating timbahay, alam ko mahaba na naman ang sermon na ito. Kasi maikli yung dalawang previous, mag-isang oras. And should any of you here in MCC or your individual lives aspire to become leaders, check your hearts for your motivation. And ask yourself if you are willing to give yourself to what the role or position demands and requires. Let us appraise and assess ourselves and then focus on what we need to heal and develop so that we can participate in the true work of love in the world. Instead of selfish love that seeks to use and abuse others, let us turn our self-love to be a force of empathy, solidarity, and good for others in our world. Magulo na ang mundo natin. Our world is a crazy place now. Huwag na tayong dumaddag, mga bakla. Huwag na tayong dumagdag sa ingay ng mga etyoserang influencers at mga charismatic na pastoras or politicians at makisali sa kanilang pakikipag-agawan sa posisyon, atensyon at kapangyarihan. Tayo ay tagasunod ni Kristo, we are followers of Jesus, na hindi naghahangad ng kasikatan at kapangyarihan. Bagkus, nangangaral, nagsisilbi, naghihilom, at nagbibigay ng kanyang sarili. And therefore, we call Him Lord and Savior. and see him as an example of what true servant leadership means. Jesus never claimed any titles. His own work and sacrifice spoke and declared the title themselves. We hear that? Jesus never claimed titles and crowns. His work and sacrifice spoke and declared the titles themselves. So do the work, even without the title. Speak goodness and truth, even when so few are listening and looking. Your own work and commitment will speak for itself. The people you help and serve will testify and speak on your behalf. Don't desire or aspire to be someone. Just be someone whose self-love overflows to love and serve others the way Jesus did. Amen.